So welcome. My name is Jen. I am a library associate at Arlington Library, and I'm very happy to introduce our presenter this evening, Maggie Cogswell, Digital Projects Archivist with the Washington State Archives. Maggie has a wealth of experience and expertise with digital collection development, records management, and best practices in digital archiving, from larger scale professional projects to smaller personal collections, which is, of course, the topic of discussion tonight. So, without further ado, I want to thank you all for your respect and mindfulness, sharing this digital space with each other, and please join me in welcoming Maggie.
Hi, thank you everyone. Good evening. I'm so happy to be here. As was mentioned, my name is Maggie Cogswell, and I'm a digital projects archivist at the Washington State Archives in Olympia. And today I'm going to be sharing information about how to digitize items in your collection for preservation and access, and how to keep them safe for the long term. So I'm going to hide my video here so we can just focus on my screen. All right. So in digital projects, I work with a team that digitizes a range of materials from photographs to scrapbooks to audio recordings, but I'm also just a regular person with my own collection that needs organizing and preservation. So I understand the challenges that many of you are facing. That said, what I'll be sharing today is professional archival practices scaled down for real life and what's doable at home with limited time and budget. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we're going to talk about whether you should digitize at all, because honestly, not everything needs to be digitized. We'll look at how to make smart decisions about what's worth your time, and then we'll cover planning a project, understanding digital files and quality, and choosing equipment and tools. I'm not going to tell you what specific scanner to buy, but I will tell you what features to look for. We'll go over best practices for scanning and how to organize your files so you can find them later, and backup and storage. And finally, I'll briefly go over preserving your physical originals, because digital copies don't replace taking care of the actual photographs and documents. As was mentioned, we'll have some time at the end for questions, but if something isn't clear as we go, feel free to enter it in the chat. There's also space in your worksheet to write down any questions you may have for the end. So for this presentation, I'll be focusing mainly on photographs and documents, because that's where most of you will probably start, and that's really my area of expertise. But I will also touch on audio and video materials. The preservation principles are similar. What changes are the specific equipment and technical details. So even if you have a box of old cassettes, what we talk about today will still apply, and I'll point you to some good resources for those formats. Now, before I dive into how to digitize, I want to talk about whether to digitize. Because, like I said, digitization isn't always necessary. Sometimes improving physical storage is the best preservation choice. So we're going to talk about the reality of digital fragility, the true cost of digital preservation, and when not to digitize, and when digitization makes sense. So by the end of this section, you'll have a framework for making informed decisions about what truly needs digitization versus what's fine in good physical storage. This is about being strategic with your time, money, and effort. So I want to start with a cautionary tale. In 2014, the Getty Research Institute moved some old digital files into their new preservation system. These were black and white photographs of a tapestry that had been digitized in 2002 and were sitting on a server for 12 years. Out of the 5,000 files, 10 had corrupted to the point where they couldn't be recovered. Thankfully, the Getty still has the original photos, so they could just re-image everything. But the same isn't true for born digital files, which have no physical incarnation. And the lesson here isn't that digitization is pointless. It's that digital preservation requires active management. You can't just scan everything, put it on a hard drive, and assume it's safe forever. Digital files need care, and they need to be backed up, and they need to be checked regularly, and they need to be migrated to new storage every 5 years or so. So that's part of what we're going to focus on today, not just how to digitize, but how to keep those digital files safe for decades. So before I go any further, I want to be clear about what digitization entails. At the Washington State Archives, we know that managing digital collections is often more expensive and more time-consuming than managing physical collections. And that's with professional systems and dedicated staff. For example, a photograph in an archival folder costs maybe 50 cents to house. It can sit on a shelf in a stable environment for 100 years with just an annual check, and that's it. A digital file, you'll need a scanner, let's say that's $500, time to scan, 1 to 2 minutes per photo roughly, multiple storage devices that you'll replace every 5 years, cloud storage subscriptions, time for annual verification to make sure files haven't corrupted, and every 5 years, you're migrating everything to new media. Over 5 years, you're looking at over $1,000 plus significant time investment. And that's just for the first 5 years. This continues forever. So again, I'm not saying any of this to discourage you. I'm saying it because I want you to make informed decisions. Digitization doesn't mean you're done with preservation. It means you're taking on more responsibility, not less. So the question you should be asking yourself isn't, should I digitize everything? The question is, what is worth this level of ongoing commitment? Now let's talk about when digitization makes sense and when it doesn't, or it can wait. You might not need to digitize when items are already stable and not deteriorating. If your storage conditions are good, and your objects are in a cool, dry, and stable environment, and you're not accessing them frequently, or if you cannot commit to ongoing digital management, if you have limited time or budget, be strategic. If items are duplicates, you don't need to digitize all copies. Digitize when items are actively deteriorating or at risk. Photos that are fading, negatives that smell like vinegar, magnetic tape that is 40 years or older, when you need frequent access. Digital copies reduce handling of fragile originals. For sharing with distant family, as backups against a catastrophic loss such as fire or flood. For obsolete formats like VHS, cassettes, reel-to-reel, where digitization is urgent. For unique or irreplaceable items. If digitization isn't a realistic option for you, that's also okay. Good physical storage is preservation, and choosing not to digitize isn't a failure. At the archives, we have millions of items that aren't digitized. They are properly stored, they're safe, and they're accessible when needed. But if you can, the decision matrix in part 3 of your planning worksheet can help you decide what to prioritize for digitization and what can wait if needed. So you've decided that digitization makes sense for at least some of your materials. That's great. Now let's talk about how to plan and execute a successful project. In this section, I'm going to go over what happens before you start digitizing. I'm going to walk you through surveying your collection, making strategic decisions about priorities, and creating a realistic project plan. The planning worksheet you receive follows this exact process. We'll be referring to it, I'll be referring to specific parts of it as we go. So by the end of this section, you'll know exactly how to scope a manageable first project that you can actually complete. So here's the complete workflow for a digitization project. Everything you need to do before, during, and after scanning. Your planning worksheet is organized to follow this same workflow. Think of this slide as your roadmap. We are going to walk through each of these steps in detail. So by the end of today, you'll understand every piece of this process and have a worksheet you can use to plan your own project. Let's start at the beginning by surveying your collection. This is parts 1 and 2 in your worksheet. So at the Washington State Archives, every digitization project starts with a survey. We need to understand what we have before we can make decisions about it. First, what types of materials do you have? Photographs, documents, scrapbooks, audio, video? I want you to list them all. Second, how much of each type? You don't need an exact count, but 1 shoebox of photos versus 20 albums makes a huge difference in planning. Third, what condition are they in? Good, fair, or poor? If you're not sure how to assess condition, there's a guide on page 15 of your worksheet that shows what good, fair, and poor look like for different material types. This helps identify what needs urgent attention. Fourth, where and how are they currently stored? An interior closet is very different from an attic. Maybe you need to improve your storage and housing first and then digitize. This survey gives you the information you need to make the decisions that come next. So please take your time with this step because it really is the foundation of everything else. All right, now we're going to use our survey to make strategic decisions. Think of this like triaging patients in an emergency room. You assess urgency and allocate resources accordingly. High priority for digitization is anything that's deteriorating or at risk. Anything that's unique with no other copies, items you access constantly, and obsolete formats that are on borrowed time. If you're wondering whether your format is obsolete, VHS, cassettes, reel-to-reel, old film, there's a guide on page 17 that shows which formats are at risk and why. Some of these are urgent because the playback equipment is literally disappearing. For medium priority, items in good condition but irreplaceable, things you access occasionally, materials with historical value. These can wait if you need to pace yourself. All right, low priority for digitization. Items in stable condition that you rarely access, materials where duplicates exist, and anything that already has good physical storage. This is how professionals work. At the Washington State Archives, we have over 100,000 cubic feet of records. The vast majority are not digitized and never will be. We digitize strategically based on deterioration risk, access demand, and available resources, and you should do the same. So once you've surveyed and hopefully organized your collection and identified priorities, I want you to start small and be selective. Do not try to digitize everything. Pick 20 to 50 of your most important items that meet our high criteria, or our high priority criteria, I should say. Complete that project fully. Scan them properly, organize them well, create your backups, and set up your management system. Then evaluate honestly. Was it worth the time and effort? Will you maintain this system? Did creating digital copies improve your access to these memories? If yes, that's great. Expand to your next priority set. If the answer is, this is harder than I expected, or I'm not sure I'll keep up with the maintenance, that's valuable information too. Maybe you digitize only your highest priority items and keep everything else in good physical storage. That's a completely valid approach. At the archives, we don't preserve everything equally. We make strategic decisions based on value, risk, and resources, and you should do. So now that you've planned your project, let's talk about the technical side, understanding digital files. In this section, we'll cover the difference between preservation files and access copies, file formats and what they mean, resolution and quality standards, and what to expect in terms of file sizes. I'll also briefly touch on audio and video files. This might sound technical, but these decisions are critical. You can always make a smaller copy later, but you can never add detail that wasn't captured initially. So at the Washington State Archives, we always create two versions of every digitized item, a preservation file and an access copy. This is the professional standard. The preservation or master file is your highest quality scan. It's uncompressed, unedited, and complete. Think of this as your digital negative. You scan your item once at the highest quality you can achieve, save it as an uncompressed TIFF file, and then you never touch it again. Never edit it, never crop it, never adjust it. Why? Because once you edit or compress a file, you can never get that original quality back. The Library of Congress puts it this way. Once a photo is compressed and pixels are discarded, those pixels can never be restored or the original quality regained. The access or derivative copy is created from that preservation file. This is what you use day to day. You can edit it, crop it, adjust the levels, resize it for email, whatever you need. And if you mess it up, that's no problem. You just go back to your preservation file and create a new access copy. At the archives, we keep our preservation files and access files on separate drives. You should too. This protects your investment of time and effort. All right, now let's talk about some file formats for photographs and documents, what they mean and when to use them. For your preservation files, you want TIFF. That stands for Tagged Image File Format. TIFF is lossless, which means no data is lost when you save the file. It's uncompressed, so yes, the files are large, often 25 to 75 megabytes per image, sometimes more, and that's good. That large file means you've captured all the information. TIFF is the industry standard for preservation. For your access copies, the ones you use and share, you want JPEG. JPEG files are lossy, meaning some data is discarded to make the file smaller. But if you use the highest quality or best setting when you create them, the quality is still excellent for everyday use. JPEGs are perfect for emailing to family, uploading to Ancestry, posting on social media. A typical JPEG might be 1 to 5 megabytes. For multi-page documents, like a 5-page letter or a legal document, PDF is your friend. It lets you combine multiple scans into a single file, and you can make it searchable using optical character recognition, or OCR. So you can search for words within the document. Now, I want to briefly touch on audio and video files, though this isn't my area of expertise. The principles are similar to photos and documents, but the technical complexity is much higher. For audio, your master files should be WAV format. That's uncompressed audio. Access copies would be MP3, which is compressed. For video, common formats are MP4 or MOV. But here's the thing. Higher quality video files are enormous. We're talking gigabytes per hour of footage, not megabytes. And video digitization requires specialized equipment and knowledge. So for most of you with VHS tapes, cassettes, and old film, I'm going to recommend professional services, which we'll talk about in the next section. The cost benefit usually makes sense to have experts handle this rather than buying expensive equipment you'll use once. If you'd like to learn more, I recommend checking out the National Archives audio and video guidance webpage, the Library of Congress's Care, Handling, and Storage of Audiovisual Materials Guide, and the International Association of Sound and Audiovisual Archives Technical Guidelines for Audio and Video. You should have received, or there should be available, the reading list for AV materials with your worksheet. Now let's talk about resolution and quality. This is where I'm going to reference FADGI, the Federal Agencies Digital Guidelines Initiative. These are the technical standards that federal agencies and the Washington State Archives use for digitization. I'm going to simplify them for some home use. Resolution is measured in PPI, pixels per inch, or DPI, dots per inch. These terms are often used interchangeably. The simple concept is more pixels means more detail, which means a larger file size, which means better quality. For documents such as letters, certificates, typed pages, a minimum of 300 PPI is fine. Apologies, I have my dog in the background. If you want better quality, go to 400 PPI. This gives you clear, readable text that you could reprint at the original size if needed. For photographs, and this is most of what you'll be scanning, 600 PPI is the minimum for standard size prints. If you think you might want to enlarge a photo later, scan at 600 to 1200 PPI. For slides and negatives, you'll need at least 1200 PPI because the originals are physically very small. All that said, if you're going to scan something once, scan it at the highest quality you can manage. You can always make a smaller copy later, but you can never add details that wasn't captured in the first place. And lastly, high quality preservation scans create large files, and that's completely normal and appropriate. A 300 PPI document scan can be 2 to 5 megabytes. A 600 PPI photo scan saved at a TIFF could be 25 to 75 megabytes. And a high resolution scan of a slide might be over 100 megabytes. Your access copies will be much smaller, typically 1 to 5 megabytes for photos and less for documents. So here's what that means for storage. A 1 terabyte external hard drive, which costs around 75 these days, can hold roughly 20,000 large TIFF photos or about 400,000 JPEG access copies. So be prepared for large files with high quality scans. When we get to the section on backup and storage, you'll see why you need multiple drives, not just one. For now, just know that large file sizes for preservation files are expected and good. Don't try to make them smaller by lowering quality. Instead, plan to have adequate storage. All right, now let's talk about equipment and tools. I'm not going to tell you, as I said, specific brands or models to buy because that changes too quickly and depends on your budget. Instead, I'm going to tell you what features to look for and what questions to ask so you can make informed decisions for your specific needs and budget. We'll cover scanners for photos and documents, smartphone scanning, and options for AV materials, and when it makes more sense to hire for professional services. So for most photographs and documents, a flatbed scanner is your most versatile tool. At the archives, we use the Epson Expressions 1200 XL scanners. These are professional grade machines that cost somewhere around $2,000 to $4,000 or more. You absolutely do not need this level of equipment for home use. I'm just showing you because I want you to understand the professional standard. For home use, here's what to look for. First, optical resolution of at least 600 ppi. This is critical. Make sure it says optical resolution, not interpolated or enhanced. Optical resolution refers to the scanner's physical, unenhanced ability to capture detail. Interpolated means the software is guessing and filling in pixels, which gives you a lower quality. Second, make sure that the glass bed is completely flat and scratch-free, which sounds obvious, but this affects scan quality significantly. Third, consider the scan area size. Standard letter size, 8.5 by 11 inches, is fine for photos in most documents. Legal size, 8.5 by 14 is better if you have longer documents. Tabloid size, 11 by 17 is ideal if you have larger items that want more flexibility. Larger scan beds cost more, so consider your needs. Fourth, if you have slides or negatives to scan, look for a scanner with a transparency unit. That is a built-in backlight for scanning transparent materials. Price-wise, basic consumer scanners run from $100 to $300 and are adequate for most home projects. Prosumer models are roughly $300 to $800 and have better optics, greater durability, and often larger beds. And professional models start at around $1,000. So check reviews on reputable sites and focus on scan quality comments, not just star ratings. All right, smartphone scanning. I acknowledge that smartphone scanning has become increasingly common. So I want to talk about when it's appropriate and when it's not. Smartphone scanning makes sense for quick captures when you have a large quantity of items. When you're, say, at a relative's house and need portability. When you have items that physically cannot go through a traditional roll scanner, or when you need something right now. It's also great for doing a preliminary survey of a collection. But smartphone scanning is not appropriate for creating your archival preservation files. It's not good for materials that require color accuracy, for small items that need magnification, or for anything fragile or valuable. And it shouldn't be your method for your highest priority items. If you do use smartphone scanning, here are some tips. Use a dedicated scanning app like Adobe Scan, Microsoft Lens, or PhotoMine. These have features specifically for document and photo scanning. Use even indirect natural lighting like daylight from a window, but not direct sunlight, which can cause glare. And keep your phone parallel to the document, not at an angle. Use the app's perspective correction features to fix any distortion. But again, here's the critical point. Smartphone scans are access copies only. They're not preservation masters. And if an item is important enough to preserve long-term, it's important enough to scan properly with a flatbed scanner. All right, audio and video materials present a special challenge. The Library of Congress and professional media preservationists have documented what they call the gathering storm for audio and video preservation. What that means is we are facing a destructive combination of two problems happening at the same time. First, the formats themselves are degrading. Magnetic tape, which is what VHS, cassettes, and reel-to-reel use, has a lifespan of only 10 to 30 years under optimal storage conditions. A VHS tape from 1985, it's already 40 years old and showing its age. The magnetic coating that holds your memories is literally shedding off the tape. Second, the playback equipment is disappearing. Manufacturers have stopped making the machines. Repair technicians are retiring, and replacement parts are becoming impossible to find at any price. Some experts believe there may not be enough working playback machines left in the world to digitize everything currently sitting in archives and closets. So you have two countdowns happening simultaneously. Your tapes are degrading, and the ability to play them back is vanishing. Media preservation experts estimate that we have maybe 10 to 15 years before the combination of degradation and obsolescence makes it either impossible or prohibitively expensive to save these recordings. For most people with audio and video materials, professional services make the most sense, and you need to act soon. This isn't something you can put off for 10 years or even another 10 years, I should say. DIY audio and video digitization options do exist. You can find USB cassette players, USB turntables, and video capture devices at consumer price points. However, I want to be very clear. This is not my area of expertise. I work mostly with photos and documents, and audio-visual digitization is a highly specialized field with technical complexities that go far beyond what I can responsibly cover here. These complexities include signal levels and conversion requirements, format-specific degradation, the need for equipment like time-based correctors, and the knowledge required to create archival quality transfers. The consumer devices I mentioned can work for simple, well-preserved recordings, but quality varies widely, and without proper calibration, you risk poor results or even tape damage. So remember that these transfers occur in real time. A 60-minute tape takes 60 minutes to digitize, so the time commitment quickly adds up. My personal and professional recommendation for most audio and visual materials is professional digitization. Many formats, as we said, are actively degrading, playback equipment is disappearing, and the preservation window is closing. So if you do explore DIY methods, start with low-value test materials. Research very carefully and understand that results may not be archival quality. For irreplaceable family recordings, such as your grandparents' voices and wedding videos or your children's first steps, I strongly recommend professional services. The peace of mind is worth it. For those who are considering a DIY approach, you can review the resource list handout and also check out sites like the Michigan State University's DIY Digitization Guide, the DC Public Library's Memory Lab Station Instructions, and even Dance USA's Artist Legacy Toolkit for digital files. These are written for non-specialists, but grounded in professional preservation practice. To find reputable AV digitization services, search for media transfer services in your city. Check if your local library or archives offer services or can provide referrals. Local photo or video shops may offer transfers, or look for companies that specialize in AV preservation. Before hiring anyone, verify a few important things. Do they have experience with your specific format? Ask to see sample work. Confirm that they return originals. This should be standard, but just verify it. Get clear pricing upfront and check customer reviews focusing on quality and whether originals were returned safely. Consider the cost benefit. Yes, professional services do cost money, but compare that to buying equipment, spending hours on real-time transfers, learning to do it properly, and the risk of poor results or damaging irreplaceable originals. When you factor in your time, professional services are often more economical. Professional services make the most sense for large quantities, obsolete formats like 8mm film or reel-to-reel, deteriorating media, irreplaceable content, or when you want guaranteed quality. The advantage is that you can focus your energy on organizing and backing up the digital files rather than struggling with the technical challenges of creating them. Now I want to cover some specialized materials that require sort of a different approach. For slides and negatives, you have some options. Dedicated film scanners from brands like PlusTech or Epson with transparency units, flatbed scanners with a transparency adapter, or advanced DSLR camera scanning setups. But honestly, if you have a large collection of slides, like 100 or more, or hundreds of them, professional services are often the most practical option. The time investment for DIY is substantial. For oversized materials, maps, architectural drawings, large photographs like panoramas, you need large format scanners, which can cost $3,000 or more. You can create a copy stand with a camera setup, but that requires some technical knowledge. For most people, professional scanning services make the most sense, and some university libraries and public libraries offer large format scanning services you can access. Now, for fragile or damaged items, this is where you really need to stop and assess carefully. If you encounter items that resist unfolding or flattening, paper that's so brittle it cracks at the edges, active mold, which is a health hazard, tears that worsen with gentle handling, or unknown substances and staining, you just need to stop. Do not try to force fragile items through a roll scanner or onto a flatbed. Sometimes the best approach is minimal handling and professional consultation. And you can contact a professional conservator through the American Institute for Conservation. Now we get to the hands-on part, actually digitizing your materials. This section is all about doing it right the first time, because if you're going to scan something once, you want to capture it properly. We'll cover safe handling, what to clean and what not to clean, scanning techniques, quality control, and creating those access copies I talked about earlier. These practices are adapted from what we do at the Washington State Archives, scaled down for some home use. So let's start with safe handling and preparation. These are simple practices that protect both you and your materials. Always wash and thoroughly dry your hands before handling. Work on a clean, clear surface. Handle items by edges when possible and support them from underneath. Never eat or drink near your materials. One spilled coffee can destroy decades of memories. Don't rush and never force anything. And don't leave items sitting on your scanner. Scanners can get hot and can damage materials. You might have also heard about wearing cotton gloves, which I often do. These are recommended, but gloves can reduce dexterity and can make you more likely to drop things. For most home projects, clean, dry hands are fine. Now, about fasteners, such as paper clips, rubber bands, and staples. Modern paper clips and rubber bands should generally be removed because they rust and they deteriorate if they haven't already. But historic fasteners might be a part of the document's history. If anything resists removal or if removal will cause damage, leave it alone and work around it. Now, when it comes to cleaning, do not clean your original materials before scanning. I know this seems counterintuitive. You'll find websites that suggest removing dirt and smudges, but I'm telling you from professional experience and preservation best practices, do not do it. Here's why. Even light dusting can cause or aggravate existing damage. Cleaning can work dirt deeper into the paper fibers rather than removing it. It can abrade photographic surfaces, and for brittle items, it can cause tearing or flaking. The risk of damage far outweighs any benefit. Remember, these items have survived decades or even a century in their current condition. They'll survive being scanned as is. What you should clean is your scanner glass using a dry microfiber cloth. Clean your workspace, wash your hands, and leave the originals alone. Here's the thing. The scanner will capture your items honestly, which is preferable for historical documentation. If there's a stain or spot that's part of the item's history, you can clean up the digital image if you want using your access copy, but preserve the truth of the original in your master file. At the archives, we document items as they are, and you should too. Now, books, albums, and scrapbooks, they present some special challenges. For most of these materials, a copy stand is recommended. That's a specialized setup with a camera mounted above the book. You can create a version of this setup at home if you have a decent camera and a tripod. For preservation quality images, you'll need a camera that has at least 12 megapixels. In this scenario, you would mount your camera on a tripod and position it directly over the book, pointing straight down. The key is to keep the camera parallel to the book. Use a level if you have one, and good even lighting. Natural light from a window works well, but avoid direct sunlight. This setup lets you photograph books without forcing the binding flat, which is much better for preservation. If you don't have camera equipment, then let's be realistic about using a flatbed scanner. Here are the rules. Never force a book flat. Support the pages that want to curl up, and scan what you can access without stressing the binding. You may miss some content near the spine, and that's okay. Damaging the binding to get a perfect scan of every millimeter is not worth it. Get what you can get safely. And a pro tip for maintaining order, especially with scrapbooks, use a pencil to lightly number pages in the upper right corner in brackets. The brackets indicate that this is information you added, not original to the item. And this helps maintain order if pages come loose during scanning. If you are planning to remove items from an album after scanning for better preservation, which we sometimes do, remember the individual items on the back using the same light pencil technique. Now let's review some of the scanner settings we covered earlier. This information is also in part 7 of your planning worksheet under technical specifications. First, choose the correct color mode. For color photographs, documents where color matters, maps, illustrations, use color mode at least 24-bit. When in doubt, scan in color. You can always convert to black and white later, but you can't add color information that wasn't captured. Grayscale at 8-bit is good for black and white photographs and some manuscripts. And bitonal, which is just black or white, no gray, is only for typed documents with good contrast. Never use bitonal for photographs or handwritten materials. Second, set your appropriate resolution, which we talked about earlier. Documents, 300 to 400 ppi. Standard photographs, minimum of 600 ppi. If you might enlarge photos, 600 to 1200. Slides and negatives, at least 1200 ppi because they're physically small. And third, choose your file format, which for all of these things, TIFF uncompressed. Proper positioning on the scanner seems obvious, but mistakes here are common. So let me give you the do's and don'ts. Do center your item on the scanner bed. Ensure that it's straight. Use the edges of the scanner as your guide. Capture the complete item, including all edges, and don't cut off corners. Leave a small border around the item. You can crop it digitally later, but you can't add back edges you didn't capture. And close the lid gently. Don't let items hang off the edge of the scanner bed, and make sure that the original fits completely on the surface of the scanner. The lid of the scanner can crush and crease the original if the paper doesn't fit. If something doesn't fit, then you might need a different scanning solution. Don't crop too close to edges during scanning. Don't force the lid closed if the item is too thick, you'll damage it. And don't leave items sitting on the heated scanner glass for extended periods. For books and albums, remember not to force the binding flat and get what you can access safely. Now, this step is what most people skip, and it's actually the most important one. Quality control. At the Washington State Archives, we do quality control checks on every image. For home projects, you need to QC your own work, and you need to do it immediately before you put the original away. Here's your QC checklist. View the scan at 100% zoom to check focus and clarity. Verify the entire item was captured, no cut-off edges. Check that colors look natural and accurate to the original. Look for dust spots on the scanner glass or other artifacts. Compare the digital image to the original side by side and verify the file saved correctly and opens. This is what I like to call the rescan immediately rule. The original is already out on your workspace. You know exactly where it goes back. And if you have a problem now, it takes very little time to rescan. If you discover the problem next week after everything's been put away, it will take longer to find the original again and set up to rescan. Once you've created your master files and verified that they're good, it's time to create your access copies. Here's the professional workflow that we use at the archives. Step 1 is always start from your master preservation TIFF file. Never edit the master itself, as mentioned. Step 2, create a duplicate of the master for all of your editing work. This duplicate becomes your access copy. Save this to a separate folder or drive. Step 3, make appropriate adjustments. Rotate to correct orientation, crop the edges, adjust the brightness and contrast as needed for clarity. And step 4, save this access copy as a JPEG at high quality, or as a PDF, depending on your needs. So now that you've scanned your materials and created your master files and access copies, let's go over how to organize those files so you can find them later. In this section, we'll cover file naming conventions, folder structure, and metadata, capturing the information about your files while you still remember it. These practices are adapted from archival standards but simplified for home use. The key is making decisions now before you scan and then being consistent. So proper file naming is essential because your files will likely be moved, copied, emailed, and downloaded over time. Therefore, file names must be descriptive, independent of where they're stored. Here's the structure that I recommend based on archival practice and my own experience. Build your file names with 3 components: date information, descriptive elements, and a sequence number if needed. For dates, use whatever level of specificity you have. That can be a specific date, a date range, a year, or even a decade, if that's all you know. Separate each number with a dash. For descriptive elements, include whatever helps you identify the item. This might be a person's name, subject, event, format, or a combination of each. Whatever makes sense for your materials. Separate each element with underscores. For sequence numbers, use leading zeros. 001, 002, 003, not just 1, 2, 3. This ensures proper computer sorting. Here's what this looks like with real examples. If I'm scanning a page from one of my childhood photo albums that covers 1986 to 1989, I'd name the files 1986-1989 as the date range, my name and the format for the descriptive elements, and the page number for the sequence. If you have a single photograph in a series with a specific date, maybe your grandmother's graduation, you could start the file name with the specific date, your mother's first and last name, and the event for the descriptive elements, and the photo number for the sequence. If you have a loose photo that's not in a series where you only know the approximate date, it could look something like this: 1950s for the decade, the name of the person in the image if you know it, and the location or subject. The key is building file names that make sense for your materials and be as specific as you can be. These names work even if the file ends up sitting alone on your desktop with no folder around it. Now let's get specific about the rules. First, avoid special characters. Don't use backslashes, forward slashes, colons, question marks, quotation marks, or any of these symbols you see on the screen. Using these characters can cause errors, break links, or make files inaccessible. Use only letters and numbers, and hyphens and/or underscores instead of spaces. Keep your file names under 50 characters when possible, while still being descriptive. Be consistent with your style. Either use all lowercase letters or use camel case, where you capitalize the first letter of each word. Pick one and stick with it throughout your entire project, and don't mix styles. Always use leading zeros in your sequential numberings, as I mentioned, 001, 002, etc. This ensures proper computer sorting. The number of leading zeros depends on your project size. Use 1 0 for under 100 items, use 2 zeros for under 1,000 items, and use 3 zeros if you have more than 1,000 items. All right, now I want to talk about folder structure. So most resources on this topic will tell you to organize however works for you, and that's fine, or be consistent. But I don't find that very helpful especially when you're staring at a box of materials, wondering where to start. So I'm going to share a specific framework that I've developed over years of organizing both physical and digital collections of the archives. I recommend organizing from broad to specific in roughly 4 levels. Level 1, organize by purpose, preservation or access. Preservation files are your masters and access files are your working copies. Keep these separate at the top. Level 2, organize by format, photographs, documents, audio, video, scrapbooks, maps, etc. Level 3, Organize by family name. For this example, I used the Braggett family collection here at the archives as my source. There are three main families represented in this collection: the Braggett family, Henderson family, and Welsh family. If I had included the Henderson family and the Welsh family in my example folder structure here, they would also be at level 3. Level 4, organize by person, event, place, or subject. You will determine, based on what you know about the items you've digitized, where they fit within this structure. I usually start with the most specific information I have and go from there. So if you know the person, use their name. For example, if it's a school photo or a series of photos of John M. Braggett, you'll create a folder with his name and then nest the image or images within that folder and apply the naming conventions I shared in the last slide. If there are multiple people and you know the event, use the event, such as weddings, reunions, birthdays, etc. Events are more specific than general subjects. If there are no people in the images or people are unknown, but you know the place, use the location. For example, many of the photos in the Braggett collection are of their property in the Nisqually Valley. So I might create a folder at this level titled Nisqually Property. And finally, if you don't have any of those things, you don't know who's in the photo, what the event was, or where it was taken, organize by subject. This could be family groups, unidentified children, landscapes, etc. Within each folder, your files will automatically sort chronologically because you've put the date first in your file names as previously discussed. Mirror this same structure in your Access folders. Finding the master file for any Access copy is straightforward because it's in the exact same location. So to summarize, here are the key organizational principles. 1, separate preservation and Access files at the top level. 2, mirror the same structure in both preservation and Access folders. 3, organize from broad to specific, each level getting more detailed. 4, use the most specific information you have: person, then event, then place, then subject. 5, keep your hierarchy shallow and don't nest folders more than 4 or 5 levels deep. And 6, be consistent. Use the same organizational logic throughout your entire collection. This framework gives you structure while still allowing flexibility for your specific materials. You can adapt it based on what you actually have and what you know about your collection. But also, there are many ways to organize digital files. This is just one formula. If this works for you, that's great. If not, take what works and leave the rest behind. Now let's talk about metadata. Metadata is data about data. It's all the contextual information that makes your files meaningful. Who is in this photo? When was it taken? Where? Who took the photograph? What was the occasion? Any notes written on the back of the original? Here's why this matters. Memory fades quickly. You might think you'll remember who's in that photo from 1965, but will you remember in 2035? Will your children or grandchildren know? Context is easily lost across generations. Metadata makes your collection searchable. If you capture this information in a spreadsheet, you can search for all photos from 1965 or all photos with Grandma Smith or all photos taken in Seattle. And finally, information is invaluable to future researchers, whether that's your family doing genealogy or historians studying daily life in the 20th century. The important thing to remember is to capture this information while you still remember it. Once the person who could identify everyone in the photos passes away, that information is lost forever. So document it now. The simplest and most practical way to capture metadata is a spreadsheet such as Excel or Google Sheets, whatever you have. Here are the fields I recommend. File name, this links your metadata to your file. Original date, approximate is okay, even just a decade. Description, a brief narrative of what's in the image. People shown, names if you know them. The location, where was it taken? The photographer, if you know it. Original format, was it a print, a slide, a negative? And notes, anything written on the original or any other context that you want to preserve. Why does a spreadsheet work so well? because it's a simple tool that most anyone can use. It's what we use. It's easy to search and sort. You can back it up along with your files. You can share it with your family members, and you don't need special software. At a minimum, capture the file name, the approximate date, a brief description, and people if you know them. More is obviously better, but those 4 fields are essential. If it's helpful, fill in the spreadsheet as you scan, not later. When you finish scanning an item and verify the quality, immediately add the row to your spreadsheet. If you wait until later, you'll either forget or never get around to it. If you want to get fancy with your metadata, you can use the Library of Congress's linked data service to find commonly used ontologies, controlled vocabularies, and other lists for bibliographic descriptions. This is what we use for professionally catalog records at the archives, but it isn't necessary for personal collections. So because digital files are fragile, they require active protection. In this section, we'll cover why digital storage fails, the 3-2-1 backup rule, practical storage options, and the maintenance schedule needed to keep your files safe long-term. Digital files will eventually be lost if stored on a single drive or device. Hard drives fail within 3 to 5 years. Technology becomes obsolete. Floppy disks, zip drives, and CDs become unreadable as drives disappeared. Local disasters like fire or flood can destroy everything stored in one location. The 3-2-1 backup rule protects against all of these risks. 3 copies protect against the hardware failure. If one drive dies, you have 2 more. 2 different media types protect against format-specific problems and obsolescence. 1 offsite copy protects against fire, flood, etc. A typical implementation of this rule is your working copy on your computer, a backup on an external hard drive at home, and a second backup in the cloud storage or at a relative's house. The specific method matters less than following the 3-2-1 principle. This is not optional. If you scan 1,000 family photographs and you store them on a single hard drive, within 5 years, that drive will likely fail and all photographs will be lost. Part 9 of your planning worksheet guides you through setting up your backup strategy. For home digitization projects, external hard drives and cloud storage are the primary options. External hard drives require 1 to 2 terabytes of storage for most projects. Choose reputable brands with a USB 3 connection, and the cost ranges from roughly $50 to $150. Advantages include a one-time cost, large capacity, and physical control. Disadvantages include sudden potential failure, which does happen, and the requirement to replace drives every 5 to 7 years. Cloud storage services like Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, Backblaze, etc. Advantages include automatic backup, remote access, and built-in offsite storage. Disadvantages include ongoing subscription costs of $10 to $20 per month and dependence on company stability. Over 5 years, cloud storage can cost up to from $600 to $1,200 compared to $75 for an external hard drive. However, a hybrid approach using both external hard drives and cloud storage provides the benefits of each and satisfies the 3-2-1 rule requirement. Proper storage of your storage devices extends media life and ensures backup accessibility. Label all your drives with permanent marker. Include the contents, creation date, and backup number. Maintain a written documentation of your backup system. Store your drives in stable temperature and humidity conditions, away from sunlight and magnets, and protect them from physical damage. Off-site storage must be in a different building. This can include a relative's house, your workplace, or a safe deposit box. Geographic separation provides additional protection. Verify backups annually. Test that drives function, files open correctly, and backups are complete. Annual verification identifies problems before you need to restore files. As I've said, digital preservation requires ongoing maintenance. Set this schedule up now. Annual maintenance includes verifying that files open correctly, checking storage media for errors, testing your cloud access, updating organization, and adding new files as you need to. Schedule this check for the same time each year. Every 5 years, migrate all of those files to new storage devices. This is proactive replacement before failure occurs. The Library of Congress recommends creating new media copies every 5 years to avoid data loss. If file formats have become obsolete, conversion may be necessary. Document each migration. Set calendar reminders immediately, record annual check dates and 5-year migration dates in Part 9 of your planning worksheet. Visual preservation fails when maintenance is forgotten. Now, I want to conclude this section by sharing a personal story with you about why backup matters. So several years ago, I spent months organizing all of my digital photos, about 12 years worth. I organized them, I renamed all the files, I added metadata, and I stored them on an external hard drive because my computer couldn't handle that much information or that many images. And it was great. I felt really proud. But because I'm an archivist, I knew I needed to make backup copies. I thought about it. I planned to do it, but I got busy with work and with my daughter and with life. And then one day, my husband dropped the hard drive that had all of our photos, all of them. 12 years of memories were gone in an instant. I was devastated. I felt incredibly stupid. I should have known better, and I do know better, but I didn't act on that knowledge in time. As of today, I have been told by a data recovery company that my files can be recovered, but it's going to cost me at least $1,900. And they've warned me that some files may not be recoverable at all. So I am telling you this story because I don't want you to learn this lesson the way that I did. Data recovery is expensive and not guaranteed, but you know what's cheap? Cloud storage, a couple of external hard drives, the 10 minutes it takes to copy your files to another location. Don't be like me, back up your files before it's too late. So we're nearing the end. I spent most of this presentation talking about creating and managing digital files, but I want to be very clear about something. Digital preservation doesn't replace physical preservation. They work together. Your digital copies provide access and backup, but the originals remain the authoritative source. They have value as historical objects, not just for their image content. So even after you've scanned everything, you still need to care for the originals properly. This will be a brief section covering environmental storage and proper housing. Think of this as the basics to keeping your originals safe while your digital files provide access. So let's talk about environmental storage for your originals. The basics preservation standards are to keep things cool, dry, and stable. Target temperature is 70 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Relative humidity should be below 55%. Avoid fluctuations. Steady conditions are more important than perfect numbers. And keep things dark, light, because light causes irreversible fading and deterioration. Locations to avoid. Obviously, attics are too hot and temperature fluctuates wildly. Basements are too damp and have flood risk. Garages have temperature extremes and exposure to chemicals from cars. Areas near exterior walls experience temperature fluctuations. Near windows means light exposure. Near pipes means water damage risk. The best locations are interior closets. They are dark, they stay relatively cool, and have stable conditions. Any climate-controlled space in the central area of your home. Keep items at least 4 inches off the floor to protect against minor floods or leaks, away from water pipes and windows. So here's the simple version. The interior hallway closet in the middle of your house is perfect. The attic where it's 100 degrees in summer, terrible. The basement that floods every spring, also terrible. Once you've digitized items, you can stop handling the originals frequently, which is actually better for them. The digital copies take the wear and tear of use. If you're going to invest in proper housing for your originals, here's what to look for. Use archival quality materials, but be careful because archival isn't a regulated term. What you need are products marked both acid-free and lignin-free. For photographs specifically, look for the PAT sticker. That stands for Photographic Activity Test, which means the material has been tested and won't damage photos. Most paper materials should be buffered, which means they have an alkaline reserve that neutralizes acid. Color photos and protein-based items like leather need unbuffered materials. What to avoid? PVC plastics. They release harmful gases as they age. Magnetic photo albums, those sticky pages damage photos over time. Rubber bands deteriorate and stain. Paper clips rust. Regular cardboard boxes contain acids. Wood boxes release compounds that damage materials. Hollinger Metal Edge, Gaylord Archival, University Products, and Light Impressions are all reputable suppliers. These aren't available at your local office supply store, so you'll need archival suppliers. And yes, this costs money. Archival photos are about 50 cents each, and an archival box is roughly $15 to $30. But compare that to the cost of digitization equipment and ongoing storage. Sometimes improving the physical storage is more cost effective than digitizing. So here's the key message I want to get across from this section. Physical preservation and digital preservation work together. They are not either or. Your physical originals are authoritative source. They must be preserved properly in good environmental conditions with appropriate housing. Your digital copies provide access and enable sharing. They protect against loss of the originals, but they require ongoing maintenance and active management. Together, this is complete preservation. Your digital copies reduce the need to handle fragile originals. Your originals remain safe in proper storage conditions. Each format is protected from different types of risks. In a sense, they back up each other. Scan items to create master and access files. Put originals in good housing and storage. Use digital copies for viewing, sharing, and research. Handle originals only when absolutely necessary. And check both physical and digital collections annually. This is how professionals work, and this is how you should work too. Don't digitize everything, then toss the originals in a damp basement. That defeats the purpose. All right. We've covered a lot today. So let me distill this down to the 6 most important things you need to remember. 1, plan before you scan. Not everything needs digitization. Good physical storage is also preservation. 2, if you're going to scan something, scan it once at the highest quality you can manage. You can't add detail later that wasn't captured in the first place. 3, create and protect your master files. Never edit them. This is your insurance policy. 4, follow the 3-2-1 backup rule. Set those calendar reminders right now with annual checks and 5-year migration. 5, organize consistently from the start. Good file naming, logical folder structure, capture metadata while you remember. And 6, don't forget about physical preservation. Digital copies are for access, originals remain the authoritative source. Before I wrap up, I want to emphasize something important. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Something is better than nothing, and a small completed project is infinitely better than a large abandoned project. If you only digitize your top 50 most important items and maintain them properly, that's a success. Progress matters more than perfection, and good enough is often good enough. Don't let uncertainty about whether you're doing everything exactly right paralyze you into doing nothing. It is okay to digitize only your highest priorities. It's okay to use smartphone scans for some quick captures while using your scanner for important items. It's okay to hire professionals for difficult materials. And it's absolutely okay to keep many items in physical storage only. And it's okay to take breaks and pace yourself. This doesn't have to happen all at once. What matters is protecting what's most important to you, following best practices for whatever you do digitize, being consistent with whatever system you choose, and actually maintaining your backups. The best digitization project is the one that you'll actually complete and maintain. So be realistic about your time, budget, and commitment level, then work within those constraints. As a reminder, you should have received 2 important documents today, or 3, I should say. First, the planning worksheet with 11 parts that walks you through every step of planning and executing your project. This is your main tool, so use it, fill it out, reference it as you work, and make as many copies as you need. Second, a quick reference handout with key settings, file naming templates, the 3-2-1 backup rule, guidance on when to seek professional help, and the full resource list. Everything I've talked about today is based on free resources available online. The Library of Congress Personal Digital Archiving website is your best starting point. It's comprehensive, authoritative, and completely free. The Personal Archiving Day Kit is an amazing resource with ready-made handouts and guides. FAGI provides the technical guidelines we've referenced. The National Archives has excellent guides for handling and digitizing family papers. The Getty blog about digital decay is truly eye-opening, and the Washington State Digital Archives shows you what professional digitization looks like. All of these URLs are on your handout, so bookmark them. These organizations have spent years developing this guidance specifically to help people like you preserve personal collections. All right, so before I go, or close, I should say, I'm not going just yet, I'm going to do questions. I want to close with this thought. Institutions like the Library of Congress, the National Archives, and organizations like the Getty Research Institute have created these amazing free resources because they understand something important. Our personal memories, your family photos, your parents' letters, recordings of your children's voices, these are the primary sources that future historians will use to understand our time. Professional archives like the Washington State Archives preserve the official record, government documents, institutional records, published materials. But the everyday lived experience of ordinary people, that's in your photo albums and your family letters. That's in your home videos. That's what tells the real story of how people have actually lived. Your family memories matter, and they deserve to be preserved with care. So remember to start small, be consistent, back up everything, and don't wait. The best time to start was yesterday, and the second best time is today. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I know this was a lot of information. So please use your planning worksheet, reference the handout, visit those free online resources, and feel free to reach out to me if you have questions as you work on your projects. I am now happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great. Thank you so much, Maggie. That was amazing. Someone mentioned in the chat that was so much information. It felt I agree. It felt like a class, like I was taking notes. So thank you so much for allowing recording. I do definitely recommend folks you can refer back to the recording and please do. And hopefully, I know there's some chat about these links to the documents. So we're dropping them in chat. We'll put them also with our recording on the YouTube channel for access. But if you guys want like physical copies in front of you, like printed out copies, like what I did. You can't see it on my camera here. That's okay. But if you would like those printed out, if you don't have a printer, you can go to your local library, wherever that may be in Snohomish or Island counties, and you can get $7 free printing with your account. So go and print those out if you would like. Okay, so I won't take any more time because we have a lot of questions. So thanks,
Yeah,
Maggie.
of course.
Let's get to some of these. Oh, okay. So this is, does the library have systems? So, we can actually, some of these that are a little more focused on like local sort of stuff, we can actually create into tickets and we'll get back to you guys individually if you want to touch base with us and give us a little more of your information so we can contact you back. So whoever asked that one, does the library have systems to move from VHS to MPEG? If you would reach back out and chat and give us your information, we can address that for you later. So why do digitized items deteriorate? Why do items digitized deteriorate is the first question.
Well, it's hard to say really, but digital decay is a real thing. I don't totally understand why it happens, but they are like physical objects in a sense. And over time, the digital object it ages, and that can distort the object, like I showed in that picture of the tapestry. They can become physically manipulated and essentially
Mhm.
look different than they did originally. So I wish I knew more about why specifically it happens, but just know that it does.
That's interesting. Thank you. Does the light from a scanner damage old photos? Is any scanner fine to use safely on photos?
Yeah, yeah. In a short period of time, it's not going to do any damage. If you're maybe rescanning the same image over and over again over time, yes, that eventually will. What's worse for images is putting it in a frame and hanging it on your wall. Honestly, the scanner is not going to do damage like that will do.
That's a good analogy. For digital backups, what is the process for annually checking the files, and why is it necessary to update the storage medium every 5 years?
Yeah, so like I said, it's important to check them regularly because digital decay can happen. Um, Formats can change. TIFF, JPEG, PDF, these are open source formats that should last for a long time. So they should not go away anytime soon. But, the world changes quickly, so you never know. So it's good to just check to make sure that you can still access them and open them with regular software that you have on your computer, not like proprietary software. Um, and then why do you, like I said, why do you need to move it to a different storage device, like to a different hard drive? Because they failed. I can speak to experience with that, not just the one that my husband dropped, but literally I have one that I use right now, and for whatever reason, it has just stopped working. Nothing has happened to it. It just decided it's not going to anymore, and it's only 3 years old. Thankfully, obviously, I have my backups now, so it's no problem. I've got everything in the cloud and on another drive, but it's a mystery, truly. They just don't work anymore.
Sometimes they have minds of their own, even though they don't have minds, I know.
Yeah.
It's hard not to anthropomorphize them. And thank you for sharing that about your hard drive. That's very personalizing.
I know.
I am,
I it was a true learning experience, and I think it's important for people to know that I am not perfect, even though I'm an archivist, and bad things do happen.
oh man, yeah. I'm glad they are able to get, it sounds like most of it back anyway.
Yeah.
So do audio files in voice memos on iPhone need to be stored another way too, or will they stay updated with Apple? I think that might be more like an Apple question. Do you
Yeah,
happen
that
to know
might be an
the
Apple
answer?
question, but I will say, your phone doesn't last forever.
Hmm.
Obviously, they are designed that way, and oftentimes they're going to age, and eventually you'll need to update your phone because the app that you were using to view it is no longer opening, etc. Um, so it's good to back up everything that's on your phone into the cloud the same way you would things on your computer or onto your hard drive.
That makes sense. When we are done with digitizing the old formats like cassettes, VHS tape slides, etc., do you know if there are ways available for recycling these old obsolete materials? That's a good question.
Um, I don't. I wouldn't get rid of them personally, but that is your choice. That might be something to look into. I am not familiar with that.
Okay, yeah. Maybe that person, if you're still around, again, if you want to drop your information in the chat, like your name, and if you have a library account, your library account number would be great. And we can look into that. We can help you kind of reference question that out. Are nitrile gloves okay to use?
I think so. Yes, I believe we use those as too. I don't have any. Um, I don't have any specific knowledge on those, but we do use them, and I think they're fine. Yes.
Okay, great. Um, oh, what are the best names for iPhone scanning apps? I think that came up a couple times. Chat.
Yeah, I don't use any personally, but the ones that when I did some research, I think PhotoMine was a really popular one. There was
Photo
another one
me.
by Adobe that was also really popular. And the technology has changed significantly since the last time I checked these out, so they could be a lot better than they were the last time I used one.
Okay. Photo mine, that's good. Maybe write that down for later. Oh, so this one, where does date organization fit in? And this came up, I made note of it because I saw this
Hmm.
come in. It came up during the slide about folder structure.
Hmm.
So I'm not exactly sure
Oh, it's because
where
I
does date
didn't put the
organization
date.
fit in?
I think it's because within the folder structure example that I offered, I didn't use dates. I didn't do
Oh,
chronological because that's my personal preference. And I didn't do that specifically because I suggest putting the date in the actual file name. So once you've
right.
organized everything into the category, event, person, place, right, it will organize chronologically within the folder through the items themselves.
Right, that makes sense. And you were right. There were no dates in that particular slide, so that does make sense. But yes, if you recall back, the person who asked that question in the slide with the file names and the conventions of all caps or like the camel
Mhm,
case, there were dates definitely were mentioned in there.
mhm.
And again, these planning documents, I know you can't see it when I hold it up. Oh, maybe there are super, super thorough. They're really, really helpful.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure you guys get those because they're going to be super duper helpful. What is needed to shield against EMP damage?
EMP damage. I'm
I'm
not
not
familiar with that
sure.
term.
I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure
don't
what that
know.
is either. Person who asked that, if you can reach back out and
Electromagnetic.
chat. Um, for quality control, you mentioned checking that colors look natural. do you
Yeah.
recommend color calibrating the monitors you use
Hmm.
for at least internal consistency, which then requires periodic maintenance and recalibrations?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And off uh, different screens obviously come in with different quality. So if you're really serious about digitizing and color is super important to you and you're planning on maybe working in Photoshop with your Access copies, having a quality screen will make a big difference because the color will be more accurate.
Okay, that's good too. Okay, great. Does it make sense nowadays to convert digital only images to archival physical photos for high priority items? And by what method? That's an interesting question.
That's a good question. Yeah, because you're talking about born digital objects and then creating a physical copy. Um,
Hmm.
I think creating physical copies is great because you can share them, right? So I definitely recommend if you to enjoy your images, put them in a book that you can put on your coffee table. But if you're talking about doing it for preservation, I would say that's not totally necessary unless you're really concerned about your digital copies being damaged, in which case, the 3-2-1 rule should back up should be able to prevent loss of any of those things if you're doing it properly.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Just the ones you want to put on the wall or share.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure.
Um, so I'm curious what backup you are using that takes 10 minutes for 10,000 photos, as I need a new method because mine takes many hours.
Oh, like if you're backing up to maybe the cloud, is that what the question is?
That's a good question. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Maybe person, if you wrote that question, reach back out to us if you can. Um, are acid-free manila folders for groups of papers an okay start during initial sorting?
Yeah, yes, that's great. That's how I usually do it. I sometimes sort through the folders and then so that I can reuse the folders later, I'll just, come up with some sort of simple numbering system to write on them so I can keep track of what's actually
Oh
in
yeah,
them as I'm doing my organization. And then once you've recorded that information in a spreadsheet or elsewhere, you can erase that and reuse that folder later. Yeah, that's great.
that makes sense. Get some pencils too, it
Hmm.
sounds like.
Yep.
Are archival plastic sleeves good for storing individual photos, or are paper sleeves better?
Plastic sleeves are best for photos. Paper sleeves are best for negatives. And I say, and when I say plastic, I mean specifically the archive safe ones, polypropylene, polyethylene, and the other one. Um, these are great because you can actually see the image through them, right? You don't have to pull the image out of the sleeve in order to observe it, which prevents damage over time.
Yeah, that's true. Less handling. Good point.
Mhm.
This one also, who's a good local scanning service for slides? If you would, give us a little more information in chat and we can try and look that information up for you kind of locally here. Do you have any references for creating family trees outside of
Mm,
ancestry, etc., especially including information about individuals from old letters, etc.?
mm. I know Family Tree Maker was one that we used to have access to at the archives because we did often do genealogy to help people. I haven't used it in a while, so I don't know if it's still available. Um, I know that the LDS Church, I do believe they have some free resources on their website as well. They might have just like digital downloads that you can like physically fill out to make a family tree, but they might also have like programs that you can use. I would check with them.
Agreed. That might be another one too we can help you with, person who asked that question from the
Hmm.
library point of view. I know locally at my library, I have seen the LDS advertising as well as we have like up in the North Snohomish anyway, we have Stillaguamish Historical Society and they do
Hmm.
a ton of genealogy stuff. And there's lots of little places like that around Snohomish and Island County, so we can probably get you hooked up with some stuff too. Um, the pictures and videos on our smartphones are probably the most plentiful source for most people. Any comments on how to treat these?
Yeah, I mean, I personally have a Google Drive account and I have it set up so that all of my photos and videos automatically sync to the cloud. so I don't have to think about it. I recommend that. If cloud services are outside of the scope of what you can afford and what you can do, just I mean, set a calendar schedule like I recommended and connect it to your computer regularly and make sure you're backing those up to directly to your computer. Yeah,
Yeah, just have backups. That makes sense. Um, yeah, okay, great. I think we're actually getting through them pretty good. So yeah, we're
awesome.
doing good. I have thousands of old snapshots as opposed to more valuable photographs. Is it okay to shred the snapshots once scanned? I just can't save all of these old things.
I understand that. Um, you know, weed your collection. That's what we do. We don't keep everything, and nobody can, and I wouldn't expect you to. Go through them, find the ones that are the most meaningful to you, the ones you really wouldn't want to live without if you lost a digital copy, and then you maybe let go of the rest if you don't feel like you need them. That's fine.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Weed the collection. Um, okay, great. If photos are uploaded to Ancestry, how long will it be maintained for future use? That's a
Oh
great
man.
question.
As long as ancestry exists, I suppose.
Right, right.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's an
That's
interesting question.
yeah. And you lose quality, I think, when things are uploaded
Mm.
to like Facebook and Ancestry and these other sites. Um, there's another level of quality that's taken from them. You're already converting it to JPEG, and that's going to a lossy format where you're losing some of the quality of the image, and then you lose another layer when you add it to these websites. So these websites and where you put them should just be for fun. It's not for preserving anything or keeping track or keeping your original copies or anything.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy at
Hmm.
some point.
Yeah.
Um, oh, this one might also be a library question, but where can I find a 35 millimeter projector to view a film before I decide to preserve it? What would be the best avenue towards digitization? Thank you. Actually, that last part I think would be you a question.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, it's getting harder and harder to find these playback machines. You would be lucky to find one on like eBay or on another resale site. I have heard of like, what do they call them? They're a type of library where people can check out like physical objects. They're not, I wouldn't say very common everywhere, but that would be maybe a place I would check to look for one. If you have a friend or family member, you could maybe use one. Um, if you did get it, right, you would simply be viewing your materials on it, and then maybe you could um, film it with a digital camera or something. That's definitely a
Hmm.
possibility. But yeah, playback machines are getting harder and harder to find. That's one of the biggest challenges we're facing with AV materials.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, I don't know if we would be able to help you find one with the library, but we can try if you want to submit your info in the chat there, person who asked that question. Um, so can EXIF data in photo files be considered a way to record metadata, i.e. in the file itself rather than in some external documentation file? Is
Yeah.
EXIF sufficiently a standard to expect it to be readable or editable in the future?
I can't speak to that specifically, that specific format, but I do know that, um, you can save technical metadata within the object, right? That's something we can do through like our properties on our computers. But that's not the best place to store sort of that contextual information. The spreadsheet really is the best option for that. Because like that that image itself or that format could obviously expire, or you need to convert it later and you might lose that technical metadata. And also you lose that information when things go up to the cloud, oftentimes. So you can put that information inside of embedded into the format, and then you could upload it to the cloud, and then that information disappears. So having a spreadsheet is the best option.
Interesting. Okay. I know too with spreadsheets, like if you're not sure that you can maintain access to like Microsoft products, if you can sign up for a Google account, which is free, the Google spreadsheets
Hmm.
is accessible anywhere online and they are free. So if that's an
Yeah,
issue, I can
and
help you
easy to
with that at
share.
the library. Yeah, all open source stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, cool. Okay, so what are the items that sit in our family archives that might be most interest to the Washington State History Museum? Oh, that's interesting.
That's a good question. Well, I don't work at the Historical Society, but I think anything related to Washington State history, you would reach out to them and talk to them about if that was something you wanted to do. You could also reach out to a local historical society. There's a lot of those,
Mhm.
or a genealogical society. They tend to be really interested, especially in local history and local families. That's an option. We don't generally take personal collections unless they relate specifically to our collection development criteria, which is mostly government records. So if you have a collection from like a relative who was a senator or a Washington state senator, maybe that would be of something we would be interested in. You could reach out to our acquisitions team about that. Yeah.
That makes sense. And maybe, yeah, for that person too, if you want to reach back out, we can try and get you some info for the Washington State Historical Society or maybe your local, like
Hmm.
Maggie said, place. So reach back out to us. Um, this one I think. Oh, for long term. Okay, so maybe not so much for viewing like the last question, but are photo safe plastic sleeves okay for long term individual photo storage, or do you recommend paper photo sleeves?
No, plastic sleeves, like I said, are perfect. They'll last for a really long time. Polypropylene, polyethylene, and then the other one I can't seem to remember. If if you're getting them from those reputable archival supply sources that I recommended, those will last you long term, and they will be good. Yeah.
Makes sense. Just make sure, yeah, make sure it's like archival quality and you'll be good. So here's, I think, maybe the last one. Are UV glass frames okay to display photos in?
Hmm. Yeah. So I know that that there can be two options. Oftentimes there's conservation glass and then there's simply UV glass. Conservation glass is usually glare free in addition to having that UV protection.
Oh,
If you're going to go that route, yes, it's going to cost you a little bit more because that glass can be more expensive. Um, but it will protect against light damage to a degree. I can't say for sure that it will not, I can't say for sure that it won't cause some damage, but the idea is that it lessens it or prevents it from damaging it uh, faster. Yeah.
very good. And then I just actually I saw here in the chat, and I wanted to go back to this person's question of the EMP question.
Mhm.
Um, just because I want to wrap that up because I was also curious what EMP was. So what is needed to shield against EMP damage was the original question. EMP is electromagnetic pulse from high altitude nuclear detonation or from solar emissions. So I guess just general like magnetic degrade kind of stuff.
Yeah. What was the question, the initial question regarding that?
How to protect
How to
against
protect
it.
against it? Uh, I don't know. I can't really speak to that.
Okay.
That sounds like sort of an extreme case, but when if you're hopefully if you're talking about digital things or if you're talking about physical objects protecting them
Maybe I would
from
get, I mean,
that,
I can't say for sure, but I would guess maybe like your hard drive or something. Is there like a special, like,
yeah.
or maybe like a special photo safe or a special hard drive safe or
Oh,
something like that?
yeah. I don't know. I don't know. That's a good
It's
question.
an interesting question. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
I mean,
again,
a
reach out to
fireproof
the
safe might be
library.
a good shot. Yeah,
It sounds, yeah, that would sounds cool.
yeah.
Um, maybe, yeah, reach out to the library if you're still with us. Yeah, for all of you folks, if you guys want to drop your name and again, if you have it, your Sno-Isle account number, that would be super helpful. And then we can get back to you with a little bit more of this in-depth
Hmm.
information. So I think that's all we've got. Let me make sure. Yeah, I think that's all we've got.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool. And we're right at time. Wow.
Hooray, we did
Huzzah.
it.
Let me, if you guys don't mind, I'll just go through my quick little wrap up here and then I'll let everybody go. Thank you, Maggie.
Welcome.
Okay, so thanks again to everyone for joining in this evening. This program has been recorded. If you would like to refer back to any information presented tonight, please head over to our YouTube page at Sno-Isle and we'll drop that link in the chat again. Um, Other upcoming online programs that you might be interested in are Two Journeys, One Proof with Corey Smith This is about the trial and error process of genealogy research and historical research. That's going to be next Wednesday, the 12th at 6 p.m. Also, Basics of U.S. Genealogical Research with Mary Roddy. That's going to be the following Wednesday after that on November 19th, also at 6 p.m. So those links we will also drop over in the chat, or you can find them over on our website by searching events. And those are ones you do have to register for as well. So thanks again, everybody, and thanks again to Maggie for sharing her valuable time and resources and expertise on personal digital collection basics.
Thank you.
Everybody
You're
have a good
so welcome.
night.
Bye.
Yay. Very good. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Bye.